Most people raise chickens so that they don't have to buy eggs from the store, which makes more sense now than ever. But if you're throwing away their poo, you're making a huge mistake. Everyone knows that poo can be stinky, but not only is that avoidable, the way to reduce the stank is also the way to crank out some of the best compost that your garden will ever see. So in this video, I'm going to show you exactly what you need to do to harness your chicken's most powerful resources, how to turn your chicken's manure into powerful fertility in the garden without burning your plants, plus a few techniques from Korean natural farming that are going to upgrade the whole system into something truly beautiful. So if that sounds interesting to you, keep watching. Hey, welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, I'm Taylor. The recent rising prices of eggs, we're starting to see a glimpse of the future of food production. The avian flu outbreaks aren't a random occurrence as much as they're a symptom of a compromised food system. And within that food system, many are predicting that food prices will be increasing steadily and costly, possibly even dramatically in the coming year. It's been our heart with this channel to share effective and affordable gardening techniques and practices that set home gardeners up for productive crop yields and garden resilience. And that said, depending on when you're seeing this video, we will be, or shortly have already released a crash course on starting your own inflation-proof garden this season. If you're someone who appreciates a nice step-by-step approach where you don't have to worry about the missing links in the gardening process, this will be the course for you. We're going to keep it super affordable. This won't be any huge investment, just something to kind of kickstart your self-sufficiency journey. So if that sounds interesting to you, sign up for our newsletter. We'll have the link in the description, and you'll be kept in the loop about getting access to the course, as well as future free gardening resources. We already have hundreds of people, probably some of you who are watching, who have joined. If that would be of value to you, use the link in the description and we'll be in touch. Now back to the rest of the video. So where do chickens fit into compost making? Well, it starts with this thing called the deep mulch or deep litter bedding system. This is a system that has been popularized by people like Joel Salatin and others for decades now. It's a pretty tried and true method to raising chickens, especially if you're not letting them roam freely across your whole property. But even if you are, there's still so much merit to this system that there's almost no reason not to use it. The idea is simple. You're basically laying down a very thick layer of carbon-rich material in the chicken coop and run area. And by very thick, I mean as thick as possible while still being comfortable for the chickens. You can go up to a foot deep if you have the space, but probably at a minimum you'd want to put around 3 inches. Now for carbon materials, you've got options. You can use wood chips, wood shavings, straw or hay, shredded paper, and our personal favorite, dried leaves. Any of these will work, but depending on the material that you choose, it will compress down. So if you're using something like hay or leaves, for instance, put in more than seems necessary. You really can afford to lay these as deep as you can. In fact, if you want to take this method a step further, you can start by placing logs at the base of the chicken pen, and then like a hugelkultur style bed, you fill in over the top with more carbon-rich material. What's going to happen here is that the carbonaceous material will act as a sponge for the nitrogen-rich chicken manure, meaning that where previously when your chicken pooped, they would leave sloppy little landmines around the pen. Now these turds get dried out super quickly and the odor neutralizes almost instantaneously. To get started with this part of the process, simply throw down some piles of carbon material in your chicken pen and let them do the rest. Chickens are natural riflers, meaning that they love to crawl through material and try to grab any little grub, nuggets, or goodies that they can find. As they do this, they'll naturally spread out the material to fill the space that they're in. Now, depending on how deep you fill the pen with carbons will determine how often you need to replace the bedding. If you get a 3-inch layer down and you have a few hens going at it, you're potentially looking at once a month turnover. If you go full hugelkultur and you put the logs down and pile high, several feet of carbon bedding, you could get away with not replacing the bedding for years. We'll get into how to make sure that that happens a little later on, but in essence, the more you put down, the longer it will take between replacements. Another consideration that you need to make depends on your climate. If you live in a really dry climate like us, we get about 10 inches of rain a year here in Eastern Washington. You may want to water down the bedding, especially in the summer, to make sure that it's not getting dusty in the coop or in the run. Chickens do like some dusty patches to roll around in, but if it's causing particles to fly through the air, it's not going to be good for the chicken's lungs in the long run. You also may want to consider flipping the bedding around once in a while, and that is going to be especially important if you are really trying to crank out the compost You want your hens getting to peck through and scratch every little piece of carbon-rich plant fiber as possible. You also may want to flip the bedding if you notice a significant buildup of chicken turds just laying on the top of the bedding. Flip this over and get it mixed up so that the poop doesn't build up too bad. Now maybe your goal is to have a hands-off experience with the chicken bedding and you're not trying to create compost for the garden. In that case, do yourself a favor and just pile it up high right away. But if you are ready to start reaping the full benefits of owning chickens, let's talk compost. Once the bedding has been thoroughly filled with chicken manure and the materials have been evenly shredded and picked apart, the bedding is ready to get pulled out. Now at this point, hypothetically, you could put this straight into your garden, but you're running some risks, namely that chicken poo may or may not have fully decomposed yet, and harmful pathogens could be a lingering. Be this the case, you will want to wait to finish the decomposition process. Now you can just set chicken bedding aside and let it decompose for a year and you'll be left with great stuff. However, if you want to speed up this process, you're going to want to make a thermophilic compost pile, also just called a hot compost pile. This stuff will make sure to kill off all pathogenic bacteria and fungi in the material, and it will help to further break down into usable compost. Pile of material heats up when 5 specific factors are in place: carbon, nitrogen, moisture, oxygen, and size. Now get those right and the pile will heat up. This is going to be something that you have to kind of finagle and figure out with your own system to know the exact right timing for when to pull out your chicken bedding. But if you wait long enough before pulling it out, the carbon to nitrogen ratio will be perfect as is for composting. Of course, you can add in other materials like grass, coffee grounds, kitchen scraps for nitrogens, and other materials for carbons, and you can check out our checklist in the description. But if you want to, you can potentially just use the carbon bedding with all the nitrogen-rich chicken manure. Depending on how wet it is when you pull it out, you will want to wet it down to facilitate the environment necessary for thermophilic bacteria to thrive. These bacteria need water, preferably non-chlorinated, so make sure that the pile is well saturated but not so wet that it's soaked. The general advice is that you want it to be damp, not wet, like a well-wrung sponge. Make sure to pile it high. 3 feet by 3 feet is a good benchmark for most piles. This will ensure that the pile will hold in the heat, and then to add oxygen back into the pile, you'll want to just flip it a few times to further facilitate the breakdown. This will keep the pile from going anaerobic. And it will also ensure that the materials on the outer edges of the pile get incorporated into the hot center. We use a compost thermometer to monitor our temps, which can be helpful when you're trying to fine-tune your system, but you can totally just do it by feel. If you stick your hand into the pile, it should be impossible for you to hold your hand in for more than a few seconds. A hot compost pile needs to get up to between 130 and 160 degrees Fahrenheit. Much hotter and the beneficial microbes will start dying off. Colder, and pathogens won't die off. After you've flipped the pile 3 times or so, and it's cooled down to ambient temperatures, it's going to be ready to use in your garden or whatever other application that you need it for. This is an incredibly simple process made easy by the chickens doing the work of shredding the materials for you and by adding their manure to the bedding. But if you want to step up your game for this system, I've got 3 Korean natural farming upgrades that you can make to your chicken composting operation. Plus 1 bonus that's not really a KNF thing, but it is an amazing addition to the system, and that is charcoal. Charcoal is basically going to do everything that your wood chips or dried leaves do, but better. It soaks up even more moisture and nitrogen. It's healthy for chickens to have available to peck at, and it acts as a microbe hotel that can house incredible amounts of bacteria, fungi, and nutrients. If you can, I would highly recommend adding a few handfuls or even a bucket to your compost or your chicken run. For our natural farming inputs, the first one is going to be lactic acid bacteria, or LAB. This stuff is a bacterial inoculant that's going to act as a way to fend off bad bacteria in the chicken coop. LAB has been shown to manage odors in chicken coops for many years now, especially in farms that have adopted KNF chicken protocols. It also keeps chickens healthy because it's kind of acting as a cleanse of their environment. I like to include a little bit of LAB in their water as a supplement. This is just all around great stuff for chickens, so I'd highly recommend spraying LAB over the bedding from time to time to get those good bacteria in there. If you need to make LAB, you can check out our video on making that. It's a really simple process of letting rice wash water ferment for a few days, and then to culture it, you use milk, skimming off the curds, and you got LAB whey ready to use. The second KNF input is IMO4, or Indigenous Microorganisms Stage 4. If you're unfamiliar with IMO, it refers to the process of capturing and culturing microorganisms found in your local area. preferably in undisturbed forests nearby, and the resulting substance is an incredibly powerful soil inoculant. This stuff, when made properly, is loaded with bacteria and fungi that are suited to thrive in your unique climate. When you add this stuff into the mix of your chicken bedding, you're turning your chicken pen into a living organism. If properly maintained by balancing moisture levels, the IMOs will serve as the gatekeepers for all sorts of nasty bacteria and fungi. Your chickens will be healthier, the material will break down more quickly as the microbes multiply, and you'll come out on the other side with a truly remarkable product. This type of compost is stuff that you can't buy. The one warning that I'd have is that when you go to make a hot compost pile, don't allow the materials to get above 120 degrees Fahrenheit, because much hotter than that, and you'll start killing off all the incredible microbial diversity that you built up with the IMO4. To learn how to make IMO4, you can check out our video, The Complete Beginner's Guide to IMO. If you add in the IMO, make sure that you put it down first, and then you put the leaves or carbon material on top so that it gets properly mulched and protected from the sun. Now, IMO4 can be quite the process to learn how to make. It took me a few years to really get a handle on it. Maybe it'll go faster for you, but if you haven't been able to get IMO to work for you yet, or if you just want to get started with an alternative, another great option that you can add to your chicken pen is Jadam microbial solution. This stuff is similar to IMO, although it does have a little bit less microbial diversity, but it is really effective. We use it in tandem with IMO because it cultures slightly different microbes. However you choose to use it, JMS is a great addition to your chicken coop. Like LAB and IMO, it will reduce any odors that happen to arise from the coop. It creates a microbially healthy environment for your hens, and it's pretty easy to make. Again, you can check out our videos on JMS, but essentially you're taking leaf mold soil from the forest, feeding it cooked potato in water, and letting it ferment for a few days until it's ready to use. All right, guys, I hope you found that useful. If you have any questions, please let me know in the comments. And if you want to see how we made this exact chicken coop, you can check out our video all about that right here. Until next time, thanks for watching.